Bernie Sanders was asked how Biden's cabinet picture going. I'm going to let you judge his answer for yourself.
How do you feel about the cabinet so far? Do you feel like there's been enough progressive representation in Joe Biden's cabinet picks?
Well, as I have said many times, the progressive movement in this country is a very significant part of the Democratic coalition. Now, I know some of the folks in the Democratic establishment don't want to recognize it, but that is a fact. And in truth, if it wasn't for the hard work of a lot of progressive grassroots organizations who got young people involved in the political process, working class people involved in a way that we have not seen, Joe Biden would not have won that election. And I think that's pretty clear. And my point has been from day one that those voices, that movement, deserves representation in the cabinet. And if your question is, have I seen that yet? No, I have not. I've seen some good appointments, people that I like. I think people who are really, really smart, experienced, but I have not seen people from the progressive movement per se in that cabinet.
Are you holding out hope for any position, specific cabinet position to get a progressive voice?
Yeah, it's not a position. It is a question, should the progressive movement in this country, in which tens of millions, many millions, I shouldn't say tens of millions, but many, many millions of people, that a movement that constitutes 35, 40% of the Democratic Party, should that movement be represented in one capacity or more than one capacity or not? The answer is absolutely yes.
I don't like that answer because it's almost like she's giving him the opportunity to be specific. You know, whatever it might be. Yes, for Secretary of Defense. Yes, for Secretary of State. This would be more foreign policy aligned. But yes, for Treasury Secretary, whatever, fill in the blank. He could say, I want this person for this position. And then what happens is he creates a news cycle around it. And when he creates a news cycle around it, that increases left-wing pressure. And so what would happen in a situation like that is Our Revolution, Justice Democrats, a lot of the other grassroots left-wing organizations would all release memos or letters of support for progressive X in Y role. And so you create public pressure. You create a campaign when you go into specifics. And then you make it a lot more difficult for Biden to wiggle his way out of this stuff or weasel his way out of this stuff. And, you know, you start keeping score and keeping tally. Oh, how much are you actually on our side? Well, let's see. I need to see tangible stuff. And this is, in my opinion, where Bernie Sanders fails the most. Is that Bernie Sanders, don't get it twisted, man, he really is, in many ways, he's a marketing genius because he's the guy who sort of led the charge and led the movement to really increase the popularity of all the things that we think of like, duh, of course they're popular today, like Medicare for all, like a living wage. A lot of the stuff he championed, there was a time when it was viewed as like not majority positions, and now it's the overwhelming majority. And he's to thank for that. And he got, you know, young people involved in politics and gave many people enlightenment moments and got them to come into the arena. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. What Bernie Sanders cannot do at all, almost to the point where it's embarrassing, he has like negative talent on this front, is to play Machiavellian backroom politics. And you might say, hey, that's a benefit. But when you're in Washington, D.C. and all of your enemies are playing Machiavellian backroom politics, you better damn well know how to be effective. And he doesn't. And so all the opportunities that he had to be specific, to make specific demands, he didn't do it. Why didn't he do it? I don't know. It could be something as simple as he doesn't want to fail and then have to save face. You know what I mean? Like if he says this specific person for this specific role and they don't do it, well, then he's in a position where he would have to answer for that. And that could create some public embarrassment. But guess what? You're already being publicly embarrassed because he's disrespecting you and disregarding you at every step of the way. So you might as well actually go to the mat for the movement and go to the mat for the cause. And he's not. He really does believe in some very strange way that going along to get along is going to yield better results in the long run for the progressive movement. You know? Like, you can't elbow your way in the room and then expect them to like you and do favors for you. No, you elbowed your way in the room. Dance with who you came with. The way that the left flexes power is to use the bully pulpit, use the people to get aggressive, to play politics with these snakes and these cretins who never want to do any of the things that you want to do because they're more beholden to corporate donors. So we actually have a counter on this, by the way. Data for Progress released, like, here are the list of the lefties who we'd want in Biden's administration. We were 0 for 13. Let me repeat that. We were 0 for 13. Now, thankfully, Marcia Fudge was just picked for some position in the administration. She was added to the Data for Progress list, like, on the day that she was picked for something, which is kind of crazy. Like, they were so desperate to get a win, they added her to the list, and then were like, see, we got one of them. So sad, so pathetic, such losers. But hey, listen, I'll take Marcia Fudge in some position in the administration because she's better than a lot of the people who've been being picked, right? And in a clear way. But you also have, I think the head of Health and Human Services is a Medicare for All supporter, which is great. So, like, we got one person. He wasn't on the list, to be fair. Forget his name. He's a Latino gentleman. He wasn't on the list, but he is a Medicare for All supporter and pretty aggressively so. So I'll give credit for that. So we'll say we're what? I'll give him 2 for 15, which is better than 0 for 15, but still that bar is so low. And I think my point is, and why I'm so hard on Bernie these days, is that whether or not he wanted to accept the reality of it, he was the leader of the progressive movement. And you could tell he was hesitant about that because he even said it. He's like, I don't really view myself as a leader. I'm uncomfortable with that position. I believe in bottom-up power and, like, democratic power. So he's very reluctant to accept this leadership role. But my dude, whether or not you want to acknowledge it, you are a leader. And so you had to flex power. And so I know I've said this a million times, but I got to say it a million more because some of you who are watching this, maybe this is the first secular talk video you've ever seen, right? By the way, it'd be weird to stumble into this community at this late date with all the memes and shit. But anyway, what Bernie could have done and what Bernie should have done is when he had leverage, when he had power, he should have made specific demands. When did he have leverage and when did he have power? When he was still in the race and he was consistently taking 30% from Biden, what that proves is Bernie Sanders has 30% of Democratic primary voters. Those are his people, okay? So what do you do in a situation like that? You go to Joe Biden and you say, listen, I want to drop out, I want to support you, but you're going to have to make it worth my while. And if you don't make it worth my while, I'm just going to sit out the general election. That's it. I'm not going to campaign against you or endorse against you, but I'm just going to sit out. I'm not going to do anything. And I think you want my help going up against Donald Trump, don't you? You don't want to piss off 30% of the Democratic base. You really want to go into the fight that is the general election with a wounded leg? Is that what you want to do? Be my guest. Go right ahead. It's on you. It's not on me. And then you say, okay, what do you want? What kind of a deal do you want to make? And that's when Bernie could have said, here are the positions and the appointments I want. And here are the executive orders I want done within the first 100 days. And I want this in writing. I want your name in writing on this so I could go to the base and wave the sheet of paper and say, here's what I got. But instead of getting those demands, he just sort of did everything for Biden that Biden wanted and then just hoped to get paid back later with his sad campaign for being like, what was it, labor secretary? He had this sad campaign of like, oh, I would kind of be interested in that. Maybe I would hope he would pick me. Bernie, you could have demanded it up front. And so the main takeaway from this segment is that I want people to understand the days of like this up in the air, airy, fairy kind of politics of like, you know, trusting in somebody who's ideologically vapid on top of nominally opposed to you as a neoliberal corporatist. The days of like going along to get along or forming a coalition based on nothing, that's got to be over. It's got to be concrete. And so what I want to leave everybody else with is you have to be efficient, you have to be effective, you have to play politics because there's no way around it. If everybody else is playing the Machiavellian game, you got to play the Machiavellian game back. That's one thing. But the other thing is, yes, the left's power is derived from the people. Use the bully pulpit. Use the power of the people. Don't be afraid to, flood your opponent's phone line with angry people who are saying, you better sign on to this, you better do that, you better do this. But also, everything needs to be definitive. I don't know how we ever got to the point where politics wasn't about specific policy issues primarily. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people who get involved in politics and they don't even really think about or care about policy issues specifically. Like, that's the whole point. That's the end all be all. So if you're going to make coalitions with people who are like Patriot Act supporters, Iraq War supporters, crime bill supporters, you better have very specific concessions that you can show, here's why I'm doing this. But he never did that. And so now he does these sad things where, yes, I would kind of hope that maybe we could get more lefties, and it wouldn't be nice if he were to put his middle finger up to 30% of the party. I don't think that that would be very appropriate, and so maybe he better do the right thing, and hopefully he will pick some lefties that we can be happy about, and I would really appreciate that very much. So please, Joe, if you would be so kind, I would... He could have demanded all this up front. He could have done it. Now, you can make excuses for him all you want, but just understand at the end of the day, you're making excuses for him. He squandered a lot of leverage and a lot of power. I'm not attacking Bernie. I'm attacking his strategy. And so if you can't deal with strategic differences, I don't know what to tell you. Then we're just doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over and embarrassingly lose every time. And then do this new sad thing, which is I've seen many lefties like claim victory when they obviously lost. You know what I mean? That's one of the things I've seen a number of times, is like claiming that you got what you wanted when you didn't get what you wanted. And it's like, ugh, that is so gross. I see right through it. People caring more about saving face than like getting results. So anyway, I love Bernie with all my heart, but we got to acknowledge his mistakes and we got to adjust moving forward, because what I see now is just beyond sad.